The Walt Disney Company is having another hellaciously bad week. And it's not just how they relate to their streaming issues after seeing Netflix reporting that they had lost 200,000 subscribers, or just 0.1% of their total subscriber base. And we saw what it did to that stock price. That definitely did spill over to the Walt Disney Company, but they have had some other bad news this week coming from the state of Florida, with Senate Bill 4-C having just been passed by both the House and the Senate, now awaiting signature from Governor Ron DeSantis, which is a foregone conclusion at this point. We're going to talk about all of this. Stay tuned.
Guess who's coming to dinner?
WDW PRO is on tap for this one. Let's get into it. Renegade Online. Well, welcome back, folks. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It is good to see everybody out there once again. And if you are like one of the many folks out there that are not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on social medias, and do, of course, leave a comment before you head out the door today. Want to get everybody's thoughts and feedback on this Disney situation going on with the state of Florida and the newly passed Florida Senate Bill 4-C, which was introduced and passed in just a matter of about 2 days between April 19th and April 21st, a stunningly quick turnaround time for a piece of legislation, and it was passed very overwhelmingly. It was not even a close vote in either of the two Florida legislative chambers. We're going to talk about some of this, and of course, on tap, as I mentioned in the intro, let me bring him in right now, my buddy, WDW PRO from thatparkplace.com. You know, there's been a lot of discussion this past week, a lot of stuff going on in the Florida legislature, a lot of stuff going on with Governor Ron DeSantis, and a whole lot of, Twitter lawyers out there right now that, wow, some of the comments that I've seen, some of the, legal takes on this, it's boy, that's what makes Twitter fun, is Twitter. And,
well, one of the fun things about this has been watching the news spin this in a way that makes absolutely no sense if you spend 5 seconds thinking about it. And then 95% of the people taking those ridiculous ideas and arguing back and forth one against the other online with these ridiculous ideas that have absolutely nothing to do with the truth. And then for those few who are watching Valiant Renegade out there, welcome to the select, ladies and gentlemen, that know that this is all a bunch of bunk, it really makes you wonder how much of the rest of the news is complete idiocy that we just don't have time to go into every single day.
I could make, good Lord, I could make at least one video a day, which clearly I have no time to do, just on dumb stuff that is out there.
And we're going to de-dumbify all of this in this video. So hang in there, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get to it.
We are. And we're going to start with, let's go into actual context here, because, of course, that's what we do. And that is this. This is what happened this week, folks. This is what went through. This is what everybody is talking about. This is the Florida legislature's rescinding, effectively, of the special privileges that the Walt Disney Company has been enjoying for Walt Disney World since 1967, also known as the Reedy Creek District. We're going to get into that. Lake Buena Vista, the Bay Lake Company, these municipalities that Disney has been graced with by the power of the Florida legislature for the last 50-plus years. This is it. Senate Bill 4C from the Florida State Legislature. And I want everybody initially to take note, because I have had actual Twitter posts. I have had people commenting on previous videos, why didn't Disney jump in on this before it got through? And I want to call to everybody's attention out there that this bill was filed in the Senate on April 19th, 2 days ago from the time that Pro and I are recording this on Thursday night of April 21st. It passed through the Senate on the 20th, the very next day, and then passed through the House today on Thursday, the 21st. There was no time. This was a shell shock. This started out as a lot of talk about DeSantis and the Florida legislature that was going to challenge Disney for the temerity of basically raising the middle finger to the overwhelming majority of Florida voters. And then they just did it. They did it. So there was no time to react to this. And we're going to talk about some of the details of this so people understand, number one, what this bill involves, why it was filed, all this stuff about the Reedy Creek District with Disney, and we're going to get into this. But Pro, go ahead and make some comments on this.
So let's cover a couple of things. One is that after this video, everybody is going to realize that it does not matter which news source you've been going to. You have been getting such bad information. It doesn't matter if it was CNN. It doesn't matter if it was Fox News. It doesn't matter if it was MSNBC or anything else. I mean, I have not found a great source about this material, and so we're going to get into it. The other thing to note is that all of this begins with Walt Disney himself. So Walt Disney himself comes into the Florida environment, wants to do Walt Disney World, and his pitch to do so is that he wants to have essentially a city of tomorrow. So this was not originally envisioned as a giant theme park enterprise. He already had that in Disneyland. He wanted to do a theme park, but it was going to be part of a huge city in the middle of Florida. And so they set up 2 different cities in a new special district. The problem is that Disney, once they decided after his passing they did not want to do a city any longer, they wanted to just do theme parks. Disney wanted to continue using the governmental powers that they had been granted by having 2 cities in a district that were special to themselves, but they did not want to do anything else. And so they have been spending the decades under the good graces of Florida being able to self-govern while running pseudo-fake cities that you'll discover as we continue in this video. And that's going to be what gets them into some trouble.
Yeah, it will. And I want to take a moment before we dive into some of the particulars, because there have been a number of myths that have been discussed. So let's talk about some of these. And I wanted to bring up a couple of things. So there's some, we're going to get into this a little bit deeper. There is some concern out there about if they decertify this district, what happens to the billions of dollars of bonds that are outstanding with the Walt Disney Company. There is some concern that the Florida State Legislature does not even have the statutory power to alleviate this district of its autonomy. So let's talk about that for a minute. And before we dive in, let's talk about the actual language of the bill that was brought up today. And wrong.
So this is going to remove the first, I think, big misinformation that's out there. Mm-hmm. I think you're going to show that this idea that Florida couldn't even do it is untrue. And yes, by the way, here's a little lesson for everybody who's been watching the news. If the news is telling you something and taking a position where they are advocating, but at the same time it doesn't make sense, then it probably isn't true. So if they're saying on one hand, oh, how horrible this is that is happening to Disney, and at the same time they say, oh, but it can't really even happen anyway, why would they even care?
Yeah. Yeah, and this is it. There's a lot of people out there that obviously that have no love for the vast majority of the voters in Florida. They have no love for the Florida State Legislature, which is overwhelmingly controlled by the Republican Party at this point. And not trying to get into politics. This is just speaking facts. This is what's going on. And they have no love for the governor of Ron DeSantis. I'm going to bring this up because this is kind of where it started. This person on Twitter, Senator so-and-so from Florida, whose district includes Disney, says she has had discussions with Disney executives, and they have concluded that the legislature cannot dissolve Disney executives have concluded that the legislature cannot dissolve the Reedy Creek Improvement District without the approval of the district voters. This is based in the claim that a certain older statute in Florida law, 189.072, I believe, is preventing them, because that statute suggests that any special district, as Reedy Creek District, which is Disney's special district that Walt was able to cajole from the Florida legislature, as Pro was talking about, back in the 1960s, to basically be an autonomous city to where all the taxation and everything would be handled inside of Disney, that they would not be able to strip that from Disney without effectively Disney's approval. But if we actually go to the legislation that was passed today, and as I say before, this is, you live by the statute, you die by the statute. As you can see down there, highlighted in green very clearly, as was passed today, to dispel this myth. Notwithstanding 189.072, any independent special district established by a special act prior to the date of ratification of the Florida Constitution on November 5th, 1968, so on and so forth. The words notwithstanding means in spite of, meaning that it doesn't matter. The old statute that these folks are citing out there that Disney would have to vote on, which was passed by Florida legislatures 50 some odd years or plus ago, has basically been rescinded also by Florida legislatures. The new law trumps the old. So that's it. And this is what some of the court battle is going to be over, of course, but it's done. It was written in the law that says, doesn't matter what 189.072 says, this law replaces it, and the legislature has now stripped you of this district. Done.
And it needs to be said that for the first couple of days when this was making the rounds in the news, you would hear the news say, oh, but they cannot do this, right? Mm-hmm. So some of the Disney blogs would say that. They would say, oh, but the legislature can't do this. And then they would cite the statute to show that that can't be done the way that we see now. Well, guess what?
They changed the statute.
Yeah, and the whole thing was untrue. But you could have known it was untrue from the beginning, because if this was all a moot point, if the legislature couldn't affect Disney, then who would have cared? Mm-hmm. So the fact that they cared shows that they knew the entire time that this could happen. Else, why would they continue to screech and to do all the different articles? They've always known that this was a possibility. They just didn't want to say it.
Mm-hmm. And to be fair, it may have been at the outset that this language was not in the original bill. We could go back and pull it up, but it really doesn't matter at this point. It's moot, because even if this section 2 was not in the initial bill, it was amended and passed with this amendment. So that means that if it was not in the original discussion, then one could make the argument that the media and Disney itself stuck their own knife in their throats by saying that, which before the bill's final passage was able to be amended with language that then alleviated the burden of 189.072 that might not have otherwise gone through with the passage.
So here's another thing. And ladies and gentlemen, listen in on this, because this is going to show you what you're missing out on when you don't come to Valiant Renegade. Here's the real deal. Look how fast this went through both the houses in Florida, okay?
2 days.
They had this prepared. They knew they were going to do this, because there's a tremendous amount of legal effort that has to take place behind the scenes to prepare legislation in such a way that it doesn't fall apart and it doesn't blow up in your face. And by the way, that's what some of the news has now transitioned into. We'll talk about that later. Mm-hmm. But here's the trick that you can know that this is for real and that Disney has something to be concerned about. If the Florida legislature was unwise and didn't know what they were doing, they could have immediately gone after the two cities inside of Disney. So they could have went after the city of Bay Lake, or they could have went after the city of Lake Buena Vista. They did not. They went after the district, which is controlled by the two cities. Mm-hmm. Now, why does that matter? Well, if you were going to go after Disney in such a way as to damage their ability to zone and tax and all that sort of thing, you would go after the cities. And that would make a lot of sense if you wanted to damage them, only if you didn't really know the background. And the background is this. Guess who holds the debt? The debt is held by Reedy Creek Improvement District.
Mm-hmm.
This little identity, this little entity that isn't often talked about, but which both these two pseudo fake cities control. If you go after Reedy Creek first, then the debt does not necessarily go to the counties, which is the new line that all the news is going with, right? All the news is saying, oh, that's going to cause, and by the way, liberal and conservative news is saying, now that's going to cause all of this outstanding liability to go to the counties, and thus taxes will increase, and people will have to pay more in property taxes, etc. That's not necessarily true. In fact, it's unlikely, because the first step to get there is that the liabilities will likely go to the two cities which control Reedy Creek, right? They control it. Mm-hmm. And so that liability will probably go to Lake Buena Vista and to Bay Lake. The only problem is those two cities aren't really real. When they were created, they were supposed to turn into real cities. And that was why Florida granted Disney the ability to self-govern, is because they would be governing new cities. But they reversed the script. They changed it up. They didn't want to do that anymore. And so they went back to just doing theme parks, but they kept the cities. And now, 50 years plus later, it turns out that they may not be prepared to prove that those cities are actual functioning cities in the way that they would need to be. And this gets really, really messy for Disney in that scenario, where $1 to $2 billion of debt is dumped onto two cities that combined have less than 100 persons and combined have less than 20 residential homes.
Yes. Owned by Disney.
Did you hear that on Fox News and CNN, ladies and gentlemen? There you go.
Yeah, and this is the Reedy Creek District. This is their actual website. Everybody can go see it if they choose. You can see the advisory boards, the board of supervisors. Here we go, the city of Bay Lake, the city of Buena Vista. And as I had a map up here a few moments ago, y'all can see, here we are, Lake Buena Vista, Bay Lake. This is the actual Reedy Creek Improvement District maps on file. This is the legal filings. So here you are. You can see city of Bay Lake, 22.7 square miles. City of Lake Buena Vista, 3.1 square miles. Now, of course, this map primarily shows Lake Buena Vista. Bay Lake stretches out much more to the west than you can see on this map. But you will see quite a few names on this map of Lake Buena Vista that I'm sure many people out there are familiar with. We've seen Disney for years. Everybody probably remembers Buena Vista Distributors when it came to the old movie studio that Disney had. But you can see on here Sarasota Springs. You can see Disney Springs. You can see Typhoon Lagoon. You can see French Quarter, Port Orleans, and there are many, many more on here. This is the entire Disney resort area.
And now, Valiant, would you scroll up just a little bit? Mm-hmm. Let's show the viewers a little trick that Disney did, which, if you're remembering, we're talking about the fact that Disney might get into some trouble here, and they probably know they could get into some trouble here because they've been flouting the rules quite a bit, it seems to me, and to others. So let's take a look at one of those rules that seems to be getting flouted. Does everybody see those red lines over there that are really odd looking? Mm-hmm. So those lines are the boundaries for the city of Bay Lake. Now, the city of Bay Lake is much larger than Lake Buena Vista. And so we would need to scroll way over to the left. We can't, but to see all of it. And it would include the major theme parks. So Magic Kingdom, Epcot, Hollywood Studios, Animal Kingdom. But all of that crazy spaghetti noodle looking stuff over there with the red lines, the reason that it looks like that, look how neat and clean those blue lines are for Buena Vista. Look how crazy the red lines are. Now, if you look and see the text that's just floating out there in the blank space, that says Golden Oaks. Golden Oaks is a very, very high-end subdivision inside Walt Disney World Resort. But look at those boundaries. The red boundaries mean that Golden Oaks sits outside of either city. And this has been done purposefully by the Walt Disney Company because they needed to ensure that people who bought homes inside Walt Disney World did not reside in either of the two cities. And they couldn't reside in the two cities because then those two cities would function like a real city with a real government. Disney is the only force that gets to vote or gets to select who lives in those cities. The tiny population, and we're talking really, really tiny, we'll show you in a minute. But when they put in a subdivision with real people living in real homes, that had to be put outside using really strange boundaries in order to prevent anybody from ever coming into Walt Disney World and having the ability to vote or alter anything to do with the Disney resort.
And there's a name for that. It's a traditional political term called gerrymandering. And just to be clear, if the folks of Golden Oak were inside those boundaries of Bay Lake, then they would assume what we call voting power, which would be a problem for Disney.
Right. But also they would then be using the city of Bay Lake in the way that Florida had originally intended. Right. And so what's happening now is that for decades, Disney sort of got to do this under the table a little bit, because Disney was bringing in tons of people and money and tourism, right? And so Disney had this unfair competitive advantage over Universal Studios, Busch Gardens, SeaWorld, everybody else.
Yep.
People need to understand when you'll hear often right now that Disney is being targeted by Florida, by the GOP, by Republicans, etc. Okay, that's probably true. They are being targeted because they're at odds politically, right? Disney entered into the political arena, and now there are political actors who are acting against them. But to say that Disney is being damaged would be a step too far, because all that's being debated right now is that Disney is the only company that I can think of in the entire United States that essentially owns its own district, cities, government. It's like a tiny Vatican City inside of Central Florida. I mean, it's something that's just incredibly unusual, and it provides this major advantage. And so what Florida is looking at right now is saying, okay, you've had this privilege that is one of a kind, probably in the world, and now we're going to take that privilege away from you, and you're going to have to operate like a normal company with normal rules and normal taxation and normal codes and all of that sort of thing that your competitors just down the street are having to play by. You're going to have to operate under those because you came into the political arena in a way that we don't like. Mm-hmm. And as a political actor, we're now also political actors, and we're going to volley back and forth.
And that's just it. And this is a tremendous misconception that I have been seeing from a lot of folks out there. This is not a punitive piece of legislation to Disney. It's not. This is literally taking away a special privilege that the Walt Disney Company has enjoyed for over 50 years, and an absolutely unequivocal, massive competitive advantage over its peer group. As you mentioned,
where Disney wasn't holding up its end of the bargain, but nobody cared until now.
Right. Nobody cared until now. Basically, Florida never had the balls until now to challenge this incredibly ridiculous piece of special privilege that Disney has been enjoying. This is going to put them on the same legal footing as Universal, as SeaWorld, as Busch Gardens in Tampa, so on and so forth. Right now, the Walt Disney Company, inside of its own boundaries, which is everything that it operates in the state of Florida, the Walt Disney Company does not have to get approval for planning and zoning. The Walt Disney Company does not have to get building permit approval. It does not have to get anything. It does not have to go to any government outside of itself, effectively. In reality, yes, it has to go before the Reedy Creek investment district. Yes, it has to go before Bay Lake and before Lake Buena Vista. But everybody on those boards are people that were appointed by Disney as the predominant landowners, the sole landowners in those districts. It is they are municipalities in name and on paper only. What they actually are is an extension of the Walt Disney Company that is solely controlled by them.
Now, here's one of my favorite things over the last few days. One of my favorite things is this was on Twitter where somebody got tens of thousands of likes saying that Disney should just move Disney World. Just leave Florida, right? Okay, guys, listen. If you can come up with a plan for moving an area that is twice the size of Manhattan, right?
$30 billion plus in real property, $30 billion in assets.
So go ahead and move that, and I want you to move it somewhere that has mild winters. I want you to move it somewhere that has 40 square miles of property available, contiguous. I want you to move it somewhere where you're going to get this sweetheart deal where you get to be your own government. Okay, you're like a private island, except you're landlocked.
And no state income taxes.
That's right. So go find the plane that lifts this chunk of land into that scenario, right? And then the other argument is, Florida needs Disney more than Disney needs Florida. No, they're joined at the hip, right? Good luck removing this. You can't sever this relationship.
No.
I mean, even in the unimaginable scenario where Disney decided to close Disney World, they'd still have to sell it. And that's never going to happen.
No.
And here's the other thing about that. So knowing that Disney is never going to close Disney World unless Disney goes bankrupt, okay? And, Sears went bankrupt. Maybe in 70 years Disney will. Who knows? But the other thing is, when we're talking about the consequences of these actions, so these are actions that Disney has taken in the past few months, okay? Let's talk about how long the consequences are for these actions. So if Disney loses this status, let's say that they operate Disney World for 100 years. Okay, so everything is times 100 on the cost per year and how much financial implication there is for the company. So when we're talking about the result of all this, we're talking in really large numbers, both in time and in finances. Everything here is ultra consequential.
Especially, and folks, when we're talking about real property, meaning physical land, property, buildings, stuff like this. This is why this is talked about in, terms of decades. You have to.
So here's another example, okay? So here's something Disney had. Because I've heard people talk about how Disney had the ability, using this setup, to even build their own nuclear power plant. And that's true. And it's crazy, right? Disney had the power to run their own airport, and they started to in the beginning, didn't. But one of the important things is that Disney had and used the ability to construct using experimental techniques and materials. They didn't have to go to anybody to get approval for that. They could do it as long as they felt like they would not receive a lawsuit, if something went wrong. And so they were able to do things that are totally unique. And then they would take those things that they did and use that as proof of concept in other places to get it approved. Now that's gone. If this all goes through, that's gone.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is, like I said, they have enjoyed complete autonomy at this point to do and build anything they wanted without having to do the things that their competition like Universal and SeaWorld and Busch Gardens and so on and so forth have had to do. So this legislation today, and if signed by Governor DeSantis, which I would expect at this point for him to do, and I think a key piece of this is that this legislation, even if signed tomorrow, the effective date for this in terms of Disney losing this special privilege along with 4 or 5 other special districts that fall under this law. It's not just Disney. It is mostly Disney, but it is not just Disney. But these things would not go into effect until June 1st of 2023, more than a year from now. So this is going to give both Disney and the state of Florida, if it actually comes to fruition, which at this point we have no reason to doubt that it will, but it gives these two legal parties ample time and opportunity to resolve some of the for lack of better words, the minutia that will go along with what's going to happen with X, Y, and Z, things like the bonds. And again, for those folks out there with this, oh, well, these $2 billion in Disney bonds are going to get thrust upon the backs of the average homeowners outside of the Disney properties in Osceola and Orange counties. I promise you that is not going to happen. What you're being told from that standpoint is ridiculously false. Ron DeSantis, the Florida State Legislature, would not allow that to happen. These things will revert back eventually to the Disney company itself by basically these two counties levying additional taxes or collecting taxes to this point that have gone uncollected from the Walt Disney Company itself in property taxes, ad valorem sales taxes, all kind of stuff. So the door is just opening now on this.
So I would recommend that people consider that they should be skeptical of the news and that they should avoid any kinds of stories that turn politics into a cartoon. We're not here to advocate for either liberals or conservatives or Democrats or Republicans in this. Mm-hmm. That's not the intent of this video. But if you're watching or reading the news and it says that a governor of any state is going to take action which will result in the direct diminishing chance of him being reelected, then that's probably not true. Right. So when you read that this move is going to put massive taxation on average people living in two innocent counties, mm-hmm. that's probably not true, or else it wouldn't be happening that way. And just like it wasn't true when they were saying, oh, well, this can't affect Disney, ha, ha, ha. Okay, well, now that's changed, right? Yeah. So you need to pay attention to whenever you're being fed information that just doesn't feel right, or it's making things too basic. That's when you need to back out and say, okay, this doesn't add up. 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 5. Why are they trying to tell me it equals 5 in this situation?
Right. And that's why I say stuff like this that goes around the internet today, and this was being proffered out everywhere, not just by this person, but again, it was one of these things to where all you had to do was pull up the bill itself. You could see here the bill was filed. You could see here the language of the bill. This is what they were talking about with 189.072, and they were suggesting that in order for a legislature to dissolve an active independent special district, and it goes into saying that the special district itself would have to vote on that. But again, like we showed earlier, if you go to the bill itself, if you go to the actual bill, and if I can actually pull it up, good Lord, I'm having no luck today. Here we go. If you go to the actual bill itself, there you go, notwithstanding 189.072, meaning doesn't matter. And this is the point, is that people out there always take a step back, take a deep breath, wait for news to come out from that Bark Place or from Valiant Renegade, and then get the real story of what actually is going on. But this is where we are.
So Valiant, do you want to pull up the Google Earth image real quick? I want people to see this, because until you see this, mm-hmm. you can say, well, let me just put it this way. A visual is worth so much, right?
Oh, yeah.
I want everybody to see how many people and how many homes are in these two cities that Disney was supposed to develop, and that's the reason they received these governmental powers where they operate they really have 3 cities, but we're only talking about 2 cities and a special district. And by the way, while you're pulling it up, I talked to a Florida attorney today, and in most states, you've got different segments of area that are governed locally. So those are sometimes counties, sometimes parishes, and whatnot. In Florida, they have the ability to have special counties which are developed locally that are not part of the typical county system. Mm-hmm. Disney could have been built in that kind of a scenario. Mm-hmm. That would have made this much more difficult for Florida to get rid of them. But instead, they were put into a completely unique kind of special districting. And that was because they just wanted to run these 2 cities, and the 2 cities run this special district. and have this authority without having to deal with people living under that authority. So let's take a look at all the amazing people who live in. Which one do we want to start with first? Do we want Lake Buena Vista, or do we want?
Well, let's go up here to the familiar section here. We've got, okay, I'm zooming in. You can see here, and you can see down here Lake Buena Vista. You can see this red outline here on the map. This is Lake Buena Vista right here. Okay. And that represents a lot of the actual Disney hotel resort area. I want to go up here to start to where everybody kind of knows. This is the Magic Kingdom. We can all see this right here. There's the Magic Kingdom. Here's Cinderella's castle. You can see the surrounding lands. Here's Big Thunder Mountain. You got Space Mountain over here. You know, we all recognize this layout. We can see down here the Seven Seas Lagoon with the very beautiful the Grand Floridian. Got the Contemporary Resort. There's a parking lot area. And then over here, Pro, take us through this. So here's Bay Lake. And of course, that is one of the names of our infamous cities that we're discussing now, Bay Lake. And up here, just north of Bay Lake to the east, the northeast of the Magic Kingdom, as you can see right here, we see this little cul-de-sac with a basketball court.
Is everybody ready to see what skirting the rules looks like? This needs to be in the encyclopedia somewhere.
Ladies and gentlemen, this.
Welcome to beautiful Bay Lake, the city of
Bay Lake.
Remember, this gets a seal. There's a mayor. This is great. So these are all the people who are officially residents of the city of Bay Lake. The city of Bay Lake covers all of the major theme parks of Walt Disney, but these are all the homes that sit in this city. This is it.
And you are seeing it correctly. Double wides.
And every person who lives in those modular homes is selected by Disney, and all that land is owned by Disney subsidiaries.
Yes, it is.
So when we talk about that, if Reedy Creek is dissolved and all their liabilities, their billion-plus liabilities, go to these two cities, okay, each one of those houses took a massive chunk of liability.
Yeah, so, you're talking about like $200 million per double wide.
Per double wide, yes. It's a great way to put it.
This is, for those of you watching a famous trial going on right now, each of these properties would take on more debt than all of Johnny Depp's properties combined.
Here's something really great about this one. So the city of Bay Lake, which is what we're looking at right now, this cul-de-sac, the road doesn't even go through Walt Disney World Resort's property. If you'll zoom out a little bit, they actually have them drive off of Reams Road, which is north of Walt Disney World. So they tuck it in behind these trees so that nobody even knows it's there. So if you live there, it's like being a CIA spy. You know, like, where do you live? Oh, I'm not allowed to talk about that. Or from Mouse.
Here's the north. I mean, you can see here. Let's go here because we're looking at, up is actually true north in this, the way I have this set. You can see here. Here's the Magic Kingdom. Here's Space Mountain. We travel due north. We go to Disney University. We see the Disney management. We see the employee parking. We see all the industrial areas. Here, look, wait. What is that? Reedy Creek Energy Services right there, the electrical power plant for the Walt Disney World for Magic Kingdom. And if we go due east from there on an industrial road, we see the residents of Bay Lake right here.
There you go.
You can see now up here, you're kind of going out of territory, but you see a lot of these are
now. Valiant, just looking at that cul-de-sac, I'm not thinking that city probably has a need for a giant school system. Is that your take on that?
I would say that the school system involves one mom sitting outside on her porch, shouting math problems across the lawn.
So if I'm a state auditor and I'm looking to see if this is a real city with doing real things, and I'm looking at, they control a district that has accrued $1 billion+ in liability. You think I'm going to come away from this saying, oh yeah, that's a real city. They're really doing what they said they would do as part of the negotiations we had back in the 60s.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
Sure.
You're good, Disney. No worries. Print it.
And we'll leave a link to the original legislation as well. I was reading some of it today. It's about 60 pages. It's far too much to go through here, but basically established this district along with Bay Lake and Lake Buena Vista. And needless to say that the original promises, and this is where Disney is going to have some legal troubles, the original promises of what this special district would be hadn't really happened.
So now question, if you were running a city, let's say, that was made up entirely of 8 modular homes, and the people in those modular homes did not even own their land, do you think if you knew that, and you knew that might be a major, major problem worth billions of dollars against your company, do you think that you would come out in a state and say, hey, we're going to take legal action against you and fight you? Or do you think you might want to get this fixed a little bit before you do that?
Oh, I'm thinking I might want to just, do something. I'm not sure.
No, I say go
what.
all in. I say burn it to the ground, right? You got to go totally out. You got to press releases straight from the CEO. But, I'm just crazy that way. That would never happen.
Here we are. I mean, yeah, you would think that Disney might want to address this. And I find it funny. I want to get your opinion on this. I find it interesting that recently Disney has been discussing building out Disney communities, like more residential communities. And I wonder if that wasn't a potential mitigation factor or an attempt at a mitigation factor for something like this, what's going on now.
I don't know if it was a mitigation factor. What I would say about that is I think that when Disney was drawing up plans to go into that arena, they probably had a very different outlook of how they were going to be perceived by the public than what has happened 1 month later. Mm-hmm. And, I've been reading people saying, oh, why would Florida do this? And Disney is going to come out on top, and just all these things about how ludicrous it would be to take on Disney. And I'm looking at Disney stock, because I'm the kind of person, like, I get that people want to be political. Mm-hmm. And I understand that it's a lot of fun to be partisan and to have your group, and your group's always right and the narrative is what you care about. But I kind of like to look at just the stats. And I'm looking at Disney stock and I'm seeing a significant drop in 1 month. And I'm just thinking about what's been happening in this past month and correlating it. And I'll tell you another thing too. So I'm looking at Encanto, for example, because Disney Plus needs a really strong quarter, especially in light of what's happening with Netflix. Look what's happened with Netflix with them dropping subscribers and then what that did to their stock. So that kind of thing can happen to Disney too as well. And so I'm looking at when Encanto came out, they've had a movie that was out in theaters for weeks and millions of families went and saw it. And then in March, they released a movie called Turning Red that brought up all these headlines, and it had never been in theaters. So nobody had seen it. So there's all kinds of incentive for people to go watch this on Disney Plus, and they don't have to pay anything extra. So this should have broken all the records, and Disney was saying it had. Well, I'm looking, and just like the stock dropped in the past month, when Turning Red comes out, according to Nielsen, they only draw 77% of the viewership as Encanto. And Encanto had been in theaters again, right? So that doesn't seem to be trending upwards for me. So when I look at those two data points, I'm kind of thinking that things are not going the way that Disney had thought they might. And then I'm also thinking, okay, well, if I'm Disney and I've got fires everywhere, do I really want to start building giant communities? I know that was Walt's dream, sort of. Their idea of what they're going to do is very different than what he wanted to do. He wanted to revolutionize cities. They want to build, community centers. But I just don't see that as being something that shareholders are probably going to take too kindly to when there's all of these different fires and when they've got this potential forfeiture of Disney's governmental powers over Walt Disney World. It just seems to me that there's too many fires here that they need to put out first before they start delving into starting entire cities and towns. I mean, look at Disney World, right? They didn't have much success. They've got a cul-de-sac with modular homes. So let's try to get that right first.
Yeah. I mean, it's so much. This is just this is going to be interesting to watch in the next 12 months, basically, because now that this thing has passed, and of course with the minor stipulation at this point of DeSantis signing this, and the only reason I can see him not doing it at this point is to use it as a dangling carrot, as a really nasty piece of leverage over the Walt Disney Company right now. Because if he signs this, Disney can threaten a legal argument, but as far as what we can see from the statute, Florida has dropped the hammer. And sure, they can go to court. They can argue this. They can appeal it up to the Florida State Supreme Court. I don't know what grounds that Disney is going to have to argue on at this point. Not a lawyer, but it seems like their case would be thin.
Well, and Valiant. So in the interest of being nonpartisan and being apolitical, let me say that this is what's tripping up a huge part of the conservative news out there. See, the conservative news, where they're going wrong is they're coming out and saying that Disney's governmental powers have been stripped away. They're just presenting it as it's happened, right? Like DeSantis signs it and boom, here we go. Now, you've already made the point that it's going to take 1 year to come into effect. And that's for a strategic point that they've done that on the side of the Florida legislatures. But not only that, but even if it goes into effect, this is going to go then into the courts. And it's going to go for multiple reasons into the courts. And so there's going to be all kinds of legal battles going on between Disney and the state of Florida. And you could even see the Florida Supreme Court getting involved because of how complicated all this stuff is. And you could see them getting involved multiple times. So, but that's not any better for Disney. Okay. So the conservative press is misleading that they're acting like this is already a done deal. But in reality, this may be even more of a labyrinth that Disney doesn't want to navigate, because in the court systems, then these two fake cities are going to come up and all these records are going to come out. So it's not a win-win either way for Disney.
That's going to conclude this episode of In the Study with WDW Pro. Make sure you're staying tuned to this channel at Valiant Renegade and to thatparkplace.com to stay up to date on all the latest news that should be fun as they do there. They have a great writing staff. Can't recommend the website enough. Link will be in the description below as always. And until next time, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on social medias, and do leave a comment before you head out today. Take care, folks.